done a few little rants recently on non-gaming topics. Kind of want to do one now on imagination. I've touched these before a year or two ago, back when I was doing more of these kind of things. But I want to compare different kinds of imagination that I have. Somewhat in the mind of, hey, a lot of times I reach out with these things to see what other people feel. So, I see this span of imagination and my imaginary lives, as they were, that I view in certain different ways. One side of it is something that I brought up recently, which was this, hey, when I was playing Crusades and I would go swimming, I would get this sort of body feeling imagination, and I'd be thinking Barbarossa drowning and swimming is trying to swim the river and this, that, and the other. And that's very close to something I have. I go for a walk if it's raining and the water and the wind is lashing across my face and I can feel it in my beard, or when I'm at Niagara Falls, this feeling of being a Viking on the prow of a ship. Or the wind is often an instigator of this type. I'll walk, the wind is picking up, lightning's coming, and I immediately start feeling like I'm whipping through the air, as like a worm just snapping my body to fly, and generating the electricity itself. Or from my ring, the same thing. I start to feel these powers coming out of it. Just, I did a little bit of power play and stuff. Like I said, I used to be more of a mystic, but just these serpents moving up and down my body, starting from the ring and moving, not that there's a serpent on here, it's a cat, moving across and winding its way up my body, and then up and down the whole, the arm, and then up and down the whole body, and just sort of feeling charged and taking that. This sort of illusory existence that is very much linked to my physical existence at the same time. Mostly feeling. Now, the most extreme version of that, I'll step away from for a moment. We won't go there. We will eventually, but we're going to hold those off because I've already dealt with the extremes here. The next type is the storytelling imagination. One of the weaker forms of that, sometimes when I'm walking, if I'm running a role-playing game, I'll be running the storyline through my head. And I'm building it in my head, sort of like, I guess, a novelist works on a story. I've worked on some short stories. They're kind of similar to that. It starts out with this, it would be cool if I did this. But then it starts taking a life. It starts, I start snooping in and hearing the characters talking, or what they're up to, their plans, their plots. I start thinking as them in some ways, but it's more disconnected. It's not like going for the walk and being this thing, and there's no physicality to it at all, except that walking helps me think. I mean, I think computer code when I'm walking as well. I think algorithms, more algorithms than code. So, and that's another version of it maybe, but this kind of storytelling. So then the next thing up on the line towards the storytelling maybe is masturbation. Hard subject to talk about, even for me, sort of. I never told you probably, but Bill Cosby taught me how to masturbate. I had no idea, that would be a good thing to do until he mentioned it. I was fairly old at the time, I think 13 or so. One of his comedy routines, just, I don't know, it was something like this or something. I tried that and I'm like, well, it feels kind of neat. And then I figured out better things. But the imagery I get in masturbation is not quite as story aligned, but it's not really body aligned. I get more of the body imagination dreaming than I do erotic dreams, than I do with straight masturbation. Masturbation is more about the visual imagery coming in, almost in a storyline fashion. Now, the reason I say it's maybe the stronger version than this, very cerebral plotting and overhearing conversations and such now. Well, first of all, it's stronger in the sense of it wires to me more powerfully. But also it's very close to, and here we start going to the stuff where I really wonder if I'm wired differently than most people. The two other forms of imagination. Well, the one where I'm walking probably is kind of getting close to one side of this. The first is drumming, which I've talked about in another rant. This has been part of my life for so long, since before I can remember. And I can remember when I was 4 or 5, already storylines there. These are very rich visual stories, like a movie. Masturbation, essentially, what I get from it, strip away the erotic nature of that, and give me, where I can see a movie, a storyline, but very richly, very detailed, all there. I've gotten weaker at this, gotten weaker at a lot of things with age. Maybe getting out of practice, because, when you're 5, you can get away with this without being humiliated. And I managed to do so until about 17 or 18, not without being humiliated, but spending, hours a day doing this, or masturbating, as I got older. But same kind of feeling. My games, I would play them and I would do the drumming and I would see what's going on so well. Not necessarily think better, I would just see it, understand it so well, the whole storyline. So, and there is a physical excitement element to this, in the sense that I remember a story, a link to this, of an arsonist who was caught because he would take a shit wherever he burned down a house, and eventually they were able to catch him in time taking his crap and trace him to these other crimes, etc. But and when I say there's excitement, when I drum, unlike most of these other things, although sometimes playing a game will do it, I get excited enough that I have to take a crap, and actually, most of the time that I drum nowadays, I'm sitting on the pot. It helps me to have a movement a little more quickly. Okay, so the other one is dancing. And dancing is the extreme other end of this. Dancing is those feelings that I get with my imagination when I'm walking under extreme circumstances. By the way, when I'm walking under pain, for example, I see myself trudging along through Soviet Russia on a death march, There's this vague story, but it's not detailed. It's more just this thing that's going so deep with the mechanical. Well, dancing becomes this imagination that's pure spirit. There's the lights, there's the sound, but mainly there's just power emanating, flowing out of me. I kind of do that sometimes when I'm sleeping too. As I'm falling asleep, I'll start drawing power from everyone around me by everyone around me, I mean, say within maybe a mile, maybe more than that. I just start feeling the whole city alive and start pulling from it. And then, once I've built up enough of it, I lash it all out in this just sort of wave of power. That's what dancing is like, except more intense or longer, especially when the pain comes from it. It's just this beautiful thing, but it's the pure physicality side of the imagination. There is no story. There's nothing there. My mind is empty in a way that, I think people try to do through meditation. I think I can do that with meditation, but it's not exhilarating in the same way. This is just such raw power bursting out everywhere that, I don't know, it's just the most intense thing. And likewise, sometimes you get kind of that way off, like when I've gotten things like a runner's high, kind of, but so dim comparatively for me. I'm sure maybe some people get more. But it's interesting to me to see that very interesting split. Interesting, no? There I go again, repeating the same words. I hate when I do that. When I see this split, this dichotomy between the physical and the mental, or cerebral, or almost a right brain, left brain type of thing, where one side is devoted to a logical building of a story. And I've tried, this was one of the cooler experiments I tried, at least what I thought was a cool experiment. It didn't work out with it all, which was to try to use drumming, this very cerebral side of the imagination, to do mathematics. It didn't work. Walking works fine. Drumming didn't. I could not grasp it that way. I couldn't focus it into that, which was a pity. I wonder if I could use dance to do mathematics. Actually, I'd probably come closer with that, because the sleep where I was talking about the power coming in and out, well, I tended to think of that sometimes in a web type design that actually would spark thoughts about graph theory that was kind of neat. I don't think that ever went anywhere either in terms of figuring out anything really cool, but sometimes it's hard to tell. I remember I was doing the playing around with ideas with the four-color theorem after it had been solved, but somehow, my hubris says, yeah, I bet you there's a better solution. I bet you there's one that is reasonable. Likewise, Fermat's last theorem would bubble away at those at night. I'm sure a lot of people do. But it's kind of an interesting thing, because that imagination, people always said, oh, you've got a strong imagination, good imagination, because I would make cool stuff up. But I feel no desire to share that. Maybe because my imaginary life is so damn rich. That's always been my excuse. Maybe I'm just lazy, and that's quite likely. I tend to be lazy about a lot of things. But I thought I'd hit on this, mainly so that I have something to insert, because some of you are evil. I wanted something to insert between, while I'm generating the rap for Siege of Constantinople and the review. Now, I always put the review up private now, but I've always had to load it first because this stupid movie maker with my new HD camera just doesn't work well. Well, this gives me a chance to slip something in there so I don't have to load the review up right away. So that's why you got this one. I don't know if I'll have a rap for every game that I do this with, but I've been wanting to do this one. Ciao.